Hello everybody, I'm Barry Walsh, your COVID-19 math teacher for grade 10. Today we're going to find the equation of a line from its graph. I don't think you'll find this a really difficult lesson. Some of the work in the book that I'm going to ask you to do might be difficult for you, and you can email me if you have questions. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So let's get started on today's graph. Number one here. So I'm going to start off by writing y equals mx plus b. That's a great starting point when we're trying to find the equation of a line. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the y-intercept. The y-intercept is a great place to start when you're graphing or when you are looking for the equation from its graph. So let's go up here. So right away I see that the y-intercept is 2, so I'm going to put a 2 down here in the b place. And let's see where the line goes as it moves down and across to the right. So we see that it moves 1 to the right, that's plus 1 this way, and it's going down 2 minus 2. So these are the two parts of the slope. Here we have change in y, here we have change in x. You might also remember from junior high, this would be the rise and the x value would be the run. I'm going to put the x in here first, and then I'm going to put the fraction line, and I'll put the numbers carefully, make sure I put them in the right place. So remember, slope is always change in y over change in x. So y goes on the top, on the numerator of the fraction. So minus 2 for the y value of the slope, and underneath we put the plus 1. Now this is actually not a fraction, we can simplify this equation by saying y equals negative 2x plus 2. But when I'm starting to write it, I always make room here for a fraction just in case that's what it is. We have a y component and an x component. And when the x component is 1, you can just get rid of it in the second step there. Okay, number 2. Our second graph is here, and I had to squeeze these graphs together. I only have so much space. This is actually quite a wide piece of paper, but on the video it might look smaller. Okay, so let's start again with y equals mx plus b. And let's go to the y-axis, find out what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept is negative 3, so I'm going to put that there. Put my x in, and I'm going to draw the fraction line. Put the y equals in there. Okay, so this line is going up. It's going to the right and up. So let's see. It goes over to the right 2. So my x value in the slope will be 2, the denominator. And what is happening from here is that it goes up 1, 2, 3. You see that? So the x value is 2. The y value is 3. So this is the rise, the change in y, over the change in x, the run. So it's 3 over 2x minus 3. Now we're going to leave that as a fraction. Your teachers will not want you to write that as a decimal. So don't write it as 1.5, just leave it like that. Now I didn't have enough space to put more than 2 points on this graph, but all you need are 2 points. Sometimes, like in the last lesson when I was drawing the line, I put more than 2 points on there just to explain it better. Okay, so number 3 is here, y equals mx plus b. And let's go find the b value. It's pretty easy. The y-axis is here, and the y-intercept is plus 1. So we have y equals, I'm going to put the x in there, and then I'm going to put the line for the fraction. And let's see what this line is doing. Sorry about that. As the line is going down, it goes to the right, 1, 2, 3. So the denominator of the fraction will be 3. And what is the y value? So up here we have 3. Can you see that? 1, 2, 3. So it goes to the right, 3. And it's going down 1. So I'm going to put the negative 1 in the numerator. And there's our slope. And once again, we're not going to change this to a decimal. Just leave it like that. That's what your teachers would want you to do. So in your homework, you're going to have a number of these to do to practice with. And you know that you need practice. Math is practice oriented. You just can't learn it unless you practice. A lot like music in that way, a lot like hockey, and many other things that we do in our pastime. Okay, so that's the graphing aspect of it. Now, with the questions that I've given you to do in the book, there's one question that is just like this one. So let's take a look at this question. Lucia works at a restaurant. She earns $42 per night plus 6% of total tips. Write a linear equation representing the amount of pay Lucia earns. Okay, so let's start off with y equals mx plus b. Okay, so we have two numbers here. We have the $42 and we have the 6% of total tips. And the question is, which one goes where? What is the m and what is the b? Well, the y-intercept is always the fixed amount. It doesn't change, in this case for Lucia, from night to night. She earns $42. Even if no customers showed up, she'd still get $42. That's what this is saying. And she gets 6% of the tips. So whatever the tips are, that's X. And she would get 6%. Now, when we're doing these kind of questions, we write these as decimals. So decimal 0.6 X plus 42. This amount can vary according to the tips, but the $42 never changes. It's the same every night. Now it says use P for total pay and T for total amount of tips. So all that means is instead of using Y, we are going to use P, and instead of using X, we are going to use T for tips. So when the book gives you instructions on which letters to use, or if you're writing a test or an exam, you should always do what the question requests of you. Now I started off, it's just automatic for me to start off in y equals mx plus b, and then I switched it over. You can start off with p equals decimal 0.6 t plus 42. It's up to you. So in this question, I know that we're going to be working with the equation that we just worked out. So right away, I'm going to start with that equation. P equals decimal 0.6 t plus 42. Now, in case you're wondering, you can put a 0 here if you want to. I just decided that I'd leave it out. It means the same thing. Okay, so if the tips for everyone for a Saturday night, hopefully you can see this, are $480, how much does Lucia earn on that night? So we're trying to find her total pay, and the tips for everyone for that night. I left it out when I typed this, but I put it in with a pen. It says $480. So 0.06 times 480 plus 42. So P equals, I worked this out before, just to make sure I'd have it right. So this works out to $28.80 in tips, because she gets 6% of the total tips, plus 42. And remember, this is always the same, this amount, and the amount of the tips varies according to the total of the tips during the night. And then if we add those together, we get a total of $70.80 for Lucia on that particular night. Now the next part of the question, sometimes people get mixed up on where to put the $67 in this part of the problem. So let's write down again, P equals decimal 0.6 t plus, it's supposed to be a t, plus 42. Okay, so the 67, what does this represent? Well, it does not represent tips, as the previous question. We remember we had to put the number in for tips, but this represents her total pay. So we put the 67 in here for P, and we have to find out the total tips for that night. So it's decimal 0.6 t plus 42. And to find t, we have to solve this basic equation. So always a good thing to do to solve an equation. It's such an important thing to be able to do. We do opposite operation, do you remember? So I'm going to bring down the decimal 0.6 t. The first thing we do when we're solving an equation is the add-subtract part. So I'm going to add 42 and then subtract 42. Opposite operation. If I subtract 42 from the right side of the equation, I have to do the same thing on the left side of the equation. These cancel out, the 42 minus 42. And on the right side of the equation, the equal sign being the middle, I bring down decimal 0.6 t. And when we subtract that, we get 25, do we not? And the operation between the 0.06 and the t is multiplication. So we do the opposite of multiply, which is, I knew you were going to say divide, and you were right. So we divide both sides. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Divide both sides by decimal 0.6. These cancel out over here. That's what we say. And decimal 0.6 divided by decimal 0.6 is 1t, or just t. And 25 divided by decimal 0.6, this works out to be a decimal. Lots of questions work out to be decimals. They don't always work out to be nice round numbers, so it's a good thing to get used to that. And I did work this out earlier. This works out to $416.67. So the total tips on this particular night would be $416.67. And Lucia would get 6% of that. Okay, that's great, guys. Thanks for looking at lesson 3. I'm going to ask you to do in the book, and the book is Mathematics, no, change that. It's called Foundations and Pre-Calculus Mathematics 10, and it's the publisher Pearson, and it's the book that we use in Nova Scotia. Pages 363 and 364. Now, if you have trouble with any of these questions, some of them you're going to find really easy, and there's a couple of them that you might find a little bit difficult. Maybe you won't. No way of predicting that for certain. Now, I have my email here, barrywalsh@gmail.com. If you have trouble, if you're having any questions, Gmail me, email me, and I will get back to you. I'm investigating all kinds of different ways to communicate with you. This is all new to me. It's new to all the teachers right across North America. So be patient. I plan to contact people today and try to get a class together. So I ask you to be patient with that aspect of it. And I also ask you to be patient as you work through these problems. These are going to take you a while to do because there's 2 pages. But do your best. We can't ask for anything more than your best. Never be fearful of asking questions. That's why I'm here. Okay, thanks very much. Have a great day.